Key inspiration. Obviously it's 2015, 100 years since Gallipoli, and I had two generations of my family fight at Gallipoli, one whom died on Anzac Day and one who came home. So that's sort of been on my mind a lot. And then also at the same time, here in Australia, the Indigenous side of my family was having to fight their own war, and to me there's this strange tension here where we've got this one lot of people being sent off to fight one war for England, and then there's this other lot of people who are fighting another war against England here, and it's complicated for my brain to kind of really get around, and how that synthesizes into one person, these two narratives that eventually genetically end up into this one person, which is me, and how I go about kind of somehow getting those two to coexist inside myself. I think I am just hoping to ignite maybe the conversation about those two sort of wars and have them in the same thought. You know, we think a lot about Gallipoli. It's an Anzac Day, and we have this really strong sense of pride about Anzac Day, and it's this really important thing for us. But we're still not really sure how to feel about the whole stolen generation, and we sort of don't celebrate it. We're not sure if we should. It's this terrible thing, and so then should we be celebrating Gallipoli either? Really, is it something that we should be celebrating? And so conceptually, I think it's more about trying to have those conversations, trying to recognise that there were two stolen generations. You know, these young men that disappeared off to Europe and Africa and never came back. You know, and you go to all these little towns everywhere across the country, and there's these monuments to the men that never came home. But then you really have to look harder for the monuments of the Indigenous people who lost their lives. You know, and you actually can't find them; they don't exist. You know, if you're lucky, if you go to the local history museum, they might have a few articles about this massacre or that massacre or what it was like pre-white settlement, but they don't exist. You know, you really have to look hard for it, and I think that's a huge imbalance for me. You know, and I think I'm not the first person to think that, obviously, but I think it's definitely something that could be rectified to really move forward. You know, something that could move forward. So I mean, I think there's a lot of that in the work. You know, maybe it's aspirational. You know, as to perhaps if we start thinking about these things in a bit of a closer context and contextualizing them with each other and trying to understand them as two things that aren't that separate. You know, and how we deal with each one couldn't be farther apart. Yeah, the work certainly has a throw to 60s minimalism. I think, you know, this idea of space is something that can be cut. You know, Carl Andre with his bricks on the ground, you know, people were really disgusted by his bricks, but really he was understanding that, you know, the object in space didn't necessarily need to be that way, and that it could be an object through space. And so my work, you know, has a throwback to that. But I think we grow these trees at my home, these endangered eucalypt trees, Camden whites. And so I've cut one of those down. I'm not sure if you were supposed to cut one down. We have to thin them out anyway. So I've cut down this eucalypt, this endangered species of eucalypt, which will be hanging in the work. And nobody would have ever seen that wood before. You couldn't have. We're the only people, and the Arboretum in Canberra, they grow them, and where they grow naturally. So I think, I'm innovative. I'm not really sure if it's innovative, but certainly nobody would have ever seen this wood before, and it's beautiful. It looks like bone. It's unbelievable.